Welcome to the Eussen Designer Speaker Series with Billy Blue College of Design at Torrens University. Today we're speaking with Nadine Donazzan from the Colour Collective. Welcome, Nadine.
Hi, John. Thank you.
Great to have you. Now, we're going to be talking about your journey through the design industry, of course, but where did Nadine start?
So Nadine started with a business called DNA Design, and that sort of was built up through really sort of self-taught and self-experience after having studied. But my partner and I developed a lot of properties, and in doing that, the builders and the real estate agents always asked who styled it, who did all the colours, who chose everything. So from that, I realised that there was sort of an inbuilt ability to be able to do all of this. So that's where DNA Design was born.
And you mentioned you studied. Where did you study and what did you study?
I studied at the International School of Colour and Design.
Right.
8 years ago. So, and I'd already sort of started my business before that, but I wanted to study just to make sure that, I had the languaging more than anything. I think with the design business, languaging's such a big part of it. So
yeah. So when you studied, how did you know what course to actually study?
So I knew that I wanted a broad course, because at that point in time I didn't realise that colour was my thing. So I wanted to look into colour and design, so that's what I studied, both of them together. Yeah.
And how has that helped you in the progress of your career?
It's helped a lot, actually, because I think initially I was really fascinated by design, and also having been an international flight attendant before that and always travelling the world, I noticed that all I took photos of was buildings in London and the architecture, and spent lots of time in design shops, and so the inspiration was certainly born from that time in my life. But it was interesting to study design and then to understand how much colour impacted design, and I think from that, the love of colour certainly blossomed and came through.
So clearly colour is a big part of your business. The Colour Collective is the company that you're now representing, your business. Yeah. So what's the main emphasis of the business?
So the Colour Collective is like a platform for transformational experiences, channeling colour. So there's different components to it. It's travelling, so travelling overseas with a trip released for March next year to Morocco. And Morocco is such a place where colour is like your lasting memories. So it's still combined with design, so looking at design and colour, but I also think that lifestyle is such an important part of all of that as well. So the Colour Collective has become a collaboration of everything that I love, which is travel, colour, design, and obviously lifestyle.
I mean, just even mentioning Morocco, immediately it just conjures up this sense of colour and design and culture, and I can see how the design industry would be just inundated with emotion visiting there. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I think, spot on, colour is emotion. And it's being able to tap into that. I think there's a lot of fear around colour when you look at the way colour's used or the way colour is represented in certain countries. So I think, when you look at Cinque Terre in Italy or places like Morocco where they embrace colour, it's part of their culture, it's part of their lifestyle, what they wear, it's the five senses, it's the touch, taste, feel, smell, all combined to create that emotion. And I think, for me anyway, in my life and with my design principles, colour taps into all of that. So
it's interesting, isn't it, that every culture does have its colour, and having just visited Croatia, that wonderful limestone backdrop of the mountains that hits the Aegean Green Sea with the terracotta and sandstone houses. It's the colour palette of absolutely. Croatia. Then you move on to Greece, and it's the white and the aqua blue, and Australia, I guess we have our desert colours and our eucalypt. So every culture is significant as far as colour is concerned, and it takes your conversation to bring that out, doesn't it?
And I think, exactly that. Like when you look at, obviously colour is trend forecasted, and colour, the fascinating aspect of colour, like especially keeping all of that in mind, is that it is science and it's art. So it's, you know, logic brain, creative brain, right brain, left brain. And I think that's a fascination in it. And so I think with that, you know, colour is either through design or it's in nature. So in either aspect, elements of that can be picked up and can be worked with in beautiful, beautiful colourways. So I think, especially with Australia, we're very much colour in our natural world. And I think it is slowly starting to emerge. Colour is definitely starting to make a really beautiful entrance again, which is great. But I think, you know, you look at Morocco or you look at Italy, or it comes with a sense of passion as well.
Yeah.
And I think to be able to really embrace colour and work with colour, there's got to be a passion element to it.
Do you think there's that term that nature never lies?
Yes.
I mean, the colours of nature are beautiful when you look into it. Do you think subconsciously we actually relate to that and we identify with the colours that surround us?
Yes, very much so. I think like we're always, like our environment has such a big impact on us and we absorb it, whether that's subconsciously or consciously. And I think through that, you know, there's so many stories I've heard of people actually getting like a reaction, whether that's a physical reaction or an emotional reaction, depending on the space they're in and the colours that are, you know, creating that reaction. And I think, you know, when you look at kids and the way that they play with colour and embrace colour, you know, I teach colour to kids as well, and we do like a lot of self-expression exercises and things like that. And I think, you know, colour is a language of its own. And then to be able to use that language to self-express and to be creative is magic. That's when the magic happens.
Yeah. What, as a race, Australians, I mean, there's that whole theory that neutrals are incredibly popular because they're easy to live with. Do you think we're using more colour?
I think we're starting to become more confident with colour. You know, like, as we can see, it always has a starting point. So it's either coming from fashion or from food or from photography or landscape. So I think Australians are embracing colour a lot more. But I think it's also, like, when I look at the clients that I work with and I tap into that emotional connection with colour and really starting to use colour, it's clients that are going through change, or they're going through a transformation, or they're going through something that really wants them to have like a different kaleidoscope of colour to look through.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's where it's fascinating, and I think that's where people are starting to embrace it. And, you know, and that's also up to the colour designer to be able to have people trust in the fact that it's it doesn't have to be just neutral. And
What's your theory on colour for small spaces?
I like dark. I like bold.
Isn't that interesting? Because I mean, I think generally we would say that you need light colours in a small space. Tell us why dark colours work.
It depends on what you're trying to create. But if you're trying to create that setting of moody, broody, embracing, then, especially done well with lighting, then I think dark colours work really, really well. Like, I love dark colours and I love bold colours, so for me that makes sense. And that's where, like, I have to also be careful when I obviously work with people that it's their self-expression, not mine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's a really big part of it. But if someone was to ask me my opinion, I would say dark colours look amazing in small spaces.
Do you think the colours we wear, do you think that they subconsciously, once again, they're the colours we're attracted to? Is there any correlation there?
I think people sometimes dress in a sense of a mask. So I think, and not the younger generation, like the younger generation, I think embrace that a lot more. But I think there was actually a really fantastic interview with Tim Winton. And he was talking about when we all start off in life, we've all got all the different coloured pencils in our pencil case. And then as we grow up and different experiences happen and we start to lose certain colours and certain pencils, and we end up with, like he said, black, navy blue and purple. And I think that's such a great way to explain it, because I think we do all start with all the colours, and we do let them go.
Yes, yeah, and they're quite. I mean, black is a standard colour, but excuse me, blue and purple are quite vibrant as well, aren't they? And they have a lot of expression. Nadine, you mentioned DNA design, which is where you started. Why the transition into the colour collective?
Because DNA design was still focused on interior design with colour, and as I've progressed in my own life and having worked with the clients that I have, and just seeing that incredible the incredible transformation that colour brings to their world, I just fell in love with it. And my dad also worked in the land of colour, so I think, growing up in that space has now later in life come to the...
Influenced you, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned Morocco, Italy. Is there a particular culture or a design period or a designer that actually influences you?
Yes. Definitely. I think any culture that engages with the community that it's around and supporting inspires me. So that's why when I look at places like, Africa or even San Francisco, where you look at those beautiful, the ladies, those terrace houses, the painted ladies, or Morocco or Sri Lanka, India, I just think, and I don't know but I think to see colour, you obviously have to have light. So I think in those cultures, they seem to be a bit lighter, even though they're being challenged with, whatever socio-economic things they're being challenged with. But I think to be able to use colour and embrace colour and play with colour, there has to be a lightness, and there has to be. So I think that's where my love of just... Interesting,
you've gone to cultures that have quite a strong spiritual energy as well, which probably goes hand in hand. What about a designer? Is there a particular designer that is front of mind?
Marianne Hall Best. I went and saw her exhibition, was at the Museum of Sydney. And she loves bold colours, but it's not only the colours that she chooses, it's actually the way she applies them. And that's obviously so important. You can look at a colour like green, and green on a leaf, green on a shoe, green on a teacup, on a car, depending on, what it's based on, the material it's based on, and then the finish of it, whether it's a high gloss or it's, more of a matte finish. So she loved bold colours, and she just thought that using bold colours really stimulated creativity and thought. And she also was a big believer that insipid colours just kill the soul and the mind.
I love the way you went straight to your inspiration there, because I've asked that question before, and some people say, well, I'm not really influenced by anybody. And I think I actually challenge that as an answer, because I think that in a creative world, we're so visual, and we're absorbing lots of creativity that it's strong. It's influence from everywhere, and that makes us our own person in the creative world. So it's great you can identify it straight away. I relate to it. In regard to fashion, we touched on before. Do you think fashion follows interiors, or does interiors follow fashion, or do they go hand in hand?
I think, with trend forecasting, interiors follow fashion. But then when I work with clients, it's a lot of times when I ask for their inspirational piece, it can be a part of their wardrobe or their fashion. So, I remember one lady that I worked with, her inspirational piece was this handbag that was her absolute love and delight, and that ended up being a wallpaper that we chose. But so I think they go hand in hand, but when you're looking at trend forecasting, I think one follows the other.
Yeah, sure. Share one of your success stories with us, whether it's colour or design.
Okay.
We want to hear about Nadine.
All right, so I think when I started to really tap into, maybe it's a spiritual connection, maybe it's just understanding someone's psyche, but being able to work from that space is always a win-win, and is always a project that just brings unbelievable amounts of joy, and you just become best friends working on the project. And there's a real closeness and a real you know, you're sharing the whole journey and the whole story together. And, you know, a lot of them are, like I said before, when people go through a really big process of change. But a lady that I worked with in Neutral Bay, she had gone through a divorce and, you know, had the house that was very neutral, but very grand, and a display home. And she just said, I want to move as far away as possible from any of that. I don't want any of that in my space anymore. So with her house, we ended up going bright yellows and blues, and there are greys in there as well, and there's neutral colours to bring it all together. But she said, you know, I've just found such a happiness again through all of that. So that just brings me unbelievable amounts of joy.
Nadine, here we are at one of your latest projects. I love the feel of the colour and what you've actually adapted into this space, which is an open space. Tell us about what you've used here on the walls.
So on the walls here, John, I used a Versace wallpaper, and how this all came about was my client gave me a handbag, and that was her point of inspiration. And the colour on the handbag was represented in this wallpaper, and it had that tactile, that texture to it, which was really, really important to her. The great thing about working on this project was we had to create a personal transformation, a shift, from the space that she was in to this new space, this new chapter in her life.
Yeah,
so
I love the texture in this, and you've got that lovely blue-black element that's coming through on this. It's almost snakeskin, isn't it?
It is, and it's you know, it is that texture and that tactile where you actually want to touch it, you want to feel it. So
and this is an open space, which is quite clever, because we feel like we're in a little, almost a little kind of room separated, but it's an open space, and the colour gives it that definition of almost a separate area, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It helps to define this area. To her, this was her important place in this space, because she loves to entertain.
Yeah.
So to have this table, this beautiful marble table that we found, these chairs that just match it so perfectly, you know, and the chairs came originally with an oak frame. Yeah. And we just found a tint and tinted them.
Lovely balance. It really works well. So what was the palette you had originally? What were you working with?
So originally it was hog's bristle on every wall.
Hog's bristle, that's the deluxe colour that everybody uses, correct?
It's a safe colour. It's a chameleon. It works anywhere, which is great. But it also had these really red floorboards.
Right.
So her desire was to get rid of the cherry floorboards and to make it fresh, inviting, and just as far away from hog bristle.
Yeah. And what you've put personality into the room, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the foyer here, you've obviously changed hog's bristle to the colour that's here at the moment. What is it?
So this is just Lexicon Quarter. It is it's a safe colour, another Dulux colour. But I think when you're working with colour and you're trying to make clients that have been so used to a neutral palette embrace colour, you still have to be able to give them that balancing effect and, you know, bring colour in slowly.
Yeah, and what I love what you've done is when you move over into the area here, you've tied this beautiful artwork into the scheme, which connects. You've got that blue-black colour again, and it connects the whole area.
Absolutely. And to her, these colours were really important. So she had a few statement pieces, which was the palette for the whole colourway that we've created, and this was obviously one of them, and works really well with the colour that we've selected for the floorboards.
Yeah, it has a lovely feel, and it's quite encompassing at the same time. Yeah. Nadine, wow, now we're talking colour. Tell us about this. This is clearly yellow. Sunshine yellow.
This is a brilliant yellow, isn't it? So this is what you're talking about when you're talking high chroma colour. The great thing about this project and working with these clients was their love and trust in me to find the right colour for all of them. So this is the daughter's room.
Yes.
She's a very happy, bright, sunny person. So it was her choice to use a yellow in her room. But the beautiful effect of colour is you can see the personal transformation as they work with the colour. And you have the first sample up on the wall, and that initial reaction is usually one of fear and quite a lot of angst.
Yes.
But we worked through, we had maybe 5 or 6 different yellows, just looking at the different tonal variations. This is the one that obviously won. And she's so happy with it. She just loves this.
It works. I mean, I guess the natural light really gives it that sense of balance as well. But it's got punch, but it's got balance as well. Love it. Nadine, we've gone from 2 rooms with a punch of colour to a fairly, what I would call, subdued room with this, I guess, do we call it charcoal? Do we call it grey? What have you done here?
Well, this again is the beauty of working with colour and personality and people's different likes and tastes. So when we're working with colour, it doesn't always have to be that high chroma, punch in the face colour. This is obviously the son's room, so he wanted something where he felt great, so he wanted to create the man cave, which is great. We got it with this colour, and then we softened it with these curtains. So we've got softer grey in the curtains, and then the deeper grey, which obviously matched the bed.
Yeah, and there's a contrast with, I mean, you've got 3 different levels of grey, haven't you? I mean, if we call it grey.
Yes.
That's got a lot of black in it. This has actually got a bit of, it's almost got a bit of pink in it, hasn't it?
Well, that's the other beautiful thing, isn't it? So it's the tonal variations in it. Obviously working with the carpet as well. And that's something when you're working with a colour palette that you have to be so aware of, like all the undertones that come through in the colour to make sure that they all sit, which is great.
I can see why the client's happy. It's certainly not hog bristle dulux. Nothing wrong with hog bristle dulux, but you know what? Time to move on.
Yep, we took a step forwards.
Great job, thank you.
You've got great spiritual energy, and I get that. We've discussed this before, and your sense of colour is clearly your business. So you obviously have strong opinion about colour and what goes where. How do you balance that with a client that you need to understand it needs to be their choice and not your choice?
Like if I look at my colour design philosophy, it's self-expression. And so if someone can't self-express through creativity, then I think you're stifling them, and it's that to me is the key. So I think, like, I always engage with my clients initially, and there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of talking, really getting to know them on a level that's that I can then not push my opinions. Like if they ask me what I think, then I'll obviously give them, my professional opinion, but sometimes it's even, like what tonal value. So they might be frightened of using a colour if I say, look, I think in this space, this and this will work, to then start playing around with the tonal adjustment of the colour can make it comfortable enough for someone to, to be able to work with and to be able to see that colour can work well.
So in the design world, you're an interior designer, and I know you cover various aspects of the design world from a client perspective. If somebody wants a colour consultation, what's involved in that?
So it can be, like, it can go across such a broad spectrum, because it can be the whole house, it can be inside, outside, it can be just one bedroom. It can be, look, I'm going through a really big change right now and I just don't know how to embrace the next kaleidoscope of colour. So I have to first kind of understand exactly how big they need to go. And also, it also comes down to, is this for yourself, or is this for a commercial project, or is it, a home that you then want to sell? Or so I think to lay the foundations, and then depending on where they're at, we move
How
forward.
different is working in a residential environment to a commercial environment? What's the difference? Is there a difference when you're working with colour?
Yes, there is. In a commercial environment, you tend to get more of a brief from, like, for the project. On a residential project, it tends to be more, I want to change and I want to create something, and here's 100 magazine articles that I've ripped out. So they tend to need direction, whereas a commercial client will be a lot more confident on what they want to achieve in their space.
Sure, yeah. So where's Nadine going today?
Nadine is definitely following the colour collective now. That's been my dream and passion for so long, and it's so beautiful to see, the transformation between DNA design moving over to the colour collective. And I think the trips and the experiences, and then also to be able to give back to communities, a big part of what I want to do. Like working with kids, or like I'd love to work with single mums. And so be able to express a space for the kids to feel anchored in and to be able to be self-expressive when they're going through something that's quite traumatic.
That's wonderful.
So,
I mean, giving back is incredibly rewarding, and the colour and creativity is a wonderful medium to work with for that.
yeah.
If people want to find out more about the Moroccan tour next year, how do they do that?
So if they look on the website, thecolourcollective.tours, all the information is there on everything, like the tours, the workshops, and the community give back. And yeah,
And so all information of Nadine is on the Colour Collective website.
it's all on there, yeah, or DNA Design. So yeah, DNA Design's got more of my design information, and the Colour Collective is more of this creative self-expression.
Yeah, great. Nadine, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, John.
You make me